Hello. I have a friend's engine here, K-36 from Accucraft. I believe, from what I gather, most all of the K series are very similar. He's asking me to do a gasket and O-rings on his engine. I already did the other side, and then it occurred to me that maybe somebody would be interested in seeing how simple it is to disassemble at least the cylinder in order to change the O-rings for the gland O-ring and the piston O-ring. If you don't have to take apart the front, you don't, because it's the only thing that's behind here that you can't do from the backside is um, the gasket that holds the front cylinder cover on or sealed. So if you don't have any leaks coming around your front cylinder cover, just don't disturb it. If you do have to, there's just 4 screws here, and then you can cut out this is the old one. Cut out a new piece of gasket to match it, and put it on, get it wet, and it'll be pliable, and you'll have a sealed up cylinder cover. The back side is a little bit more involved. It actually has the O-rings that you want to replace. The easiest way to do all this, I found on the other side, is first remove the link pin here that links to your main drive rod. It is a shouldered pin, comes up from the bottom and has a nut over the top. You'll have to grab the bottom here. There are no slots or anything, so you'll have to grab it with a good pliers, spin off the top. I used a 7/32 socket to do that. It's not metric unless it's a 5.75. And there's also a little spacer that sits on top of this link arm, or sits underneath the link arm in here. So once you have your your pin out, you can swing your drive rod out of the way. Just point it back towards the firebox, and then there will be this screw holding up the back of the. I just had the name for this crosshead slide. Once you remove this screw out of here, it is free on the back side. Now the only thing holding the crosshead slide and the rear cylinder cover and the piston in is the rear cylinder cover. You will need a 3mm wrench or nut driver to remove these screws. I'll move you back a little bit so you can see closer to what I'm doing. This one's tighter in there. I might not be able to get my nut driver in there, so I might have to do it the wrench way. But I can be hopeful once I break it loose. And that one already looks pretty loose. I'm lucky I can get it out. Lucky duck. Now slide your piston back so that it's as far to the back of the cylinder as possible. And slide the cylinder cover and piston out. And now I've got in here, you'll see the gasket, the paper gasket. Here you'll see the back side of the cylinder. Aim this thing down. I guess I can't aim it down anymore. But right back in here, you'll see that right here is the right here is where the steam is admitted from the valve into the backside of the piston to push it forward, and then there's a same channel on the front side. Now on here, to get this apart, what you'll want to do is spin your piston rod out of the crosshead slide. Looks like you'll want to take note of if there's any threads still visible, and if in doubt, you can count your turns. So half, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15 turns and I'm out. So it's free from the crosshead slide. And I can slide this right on out. And then getting these two bolts out of here to get to the gland O-ring in here is difficult with this still on here. So I've got a Phillips screw right there that I'll remove. And now it is 3mm again to remove these. Might be some paint on the head of the screws, so your 3mm might be a snug fit. This is my first instructional video, so I'm sorry if things are out of focus. I don't have a real setup for this like before. Usually my camera's further away because I'm looking at the entire engine. Okay, now that this is free, pull it out. You see that there's this bushing in here that's attached to the mount for the crosshead slide. That goes in and squeezes on the little O-ring to make it swell up and grip the shaft of the piston better. To get the O-ring out, I used the threads of the piston rod itself. Put it in there, a little bit of side pressure. I'm not trying to twist on it, I'm just putting side pressure on it to try and use the threads to grip into the O-ring and pull it out. So here's the O-ring and measurements of it. It might be a metric O-ring, but the kit that I have had a suitable replacement. The dash number for it, or the trade number for it, is a -006. What that breaks down to, it is a 1/16 thick O-ring with a 1/8 inch OD and a 1/4 inch eighth inch ID and a 1/4 inch OD. Now I just want to clean up some of this stuff. I'm just using alcohol. If you have alcohol-fueled engines around, you'll have plenty of this. Or this is just a block of stainless. You can get more aggressive with it if you want. Or if you like the grime because it's weathered, just make sure you clean off any of the mating and sealing surfaces so you don't get any grime in there. Because otherwise you'll have characteristic of an old engine, steam leaks again. I'm trying to get something to get in there using the corner of my rag. A Q-tip is a good tool for this. I don't unfortunately have one out here. I do, however, have various sized nut drivers that I can push my rag in with. Depending on how clean you wanted to get this, it is just a block of stainless, so you can take Scotch-Brite to it if you wanted, chuck it in a drill and spin it, and that way it gets nice and polished. So there, I've got a little bit of dirt still on here at the corner where the bracket was. Maybe my thumbnail's better than a rag. But I'm not too worried. I'm one that likes to have a little bit of grime on there because it makes it look used. You can see here the witness marks for where the steam line is. Right there is where the steam comes in. When I go back together, I try to put this back at the top again. So I explained that this O-ring is a -006, which is a 1/16 thick, 1/8 inch inner diameter, and 1/4 inch outer diameter. The piston is a -014. 014 is a 1/16 thick, half-inch ID, and a 5/8 OD O-ring. Now I'm just going to take and clean the oil and residue off of this. If I could, I'd polish on the stem to try and get the grime off here. Not that it affects anything. This little bit of the rod never goes into the cylinder. Just by running this thing, you can see that there's a polished portion. That's the end of the rod travel. It doesn't go any deeper than that. That's another way to, I guess, check if you've got your rod threaded in far enough when you go to assemble. Just give the engine a spin and see if you've got shiny rods sticking out or not. So my O-rings, I've got a couple of the 006. These just came from a Napa O-ring kit that I have at work. And then I have what I use for assembly is just a turbine oil from at work. I work on airplanes, so this is engine oil from what is essentially a jet engine. A little bit of oil on there to help lubricate things. What I'm going to do, what I found makes it easiest to put this in, is to put the rod through the cylinder cover first, then put the O-ring on the rod, and now I need to push this in. I tried going the other way around, putting the O-ring in first, and then putting the rod through from the back side, and I was worried that I was going to scar the O-ring with the threads of the rod. And I'll just clean this up a little bit, get the grime off of it so that I'm not putting grime right on the O-ring that's brand new. As far as cleaners, I like alcohol. It dissolves most oils and greases, but it doesn't attack the paints, such as a lacquer thinner or brake cleaner will attack certain paints too. If you have a solvent bath available to you, that's a naphtha solvents. Those are a good cleaner. I have that at work. Sometimes I drop my whole engine right in the wash tub and give it a bath. The warning I will give there is that the vapors from that solvent are flammable, and if you saturate your ceramic sheeting around your boiler, when you light up the next time and it starts to warm up, you'll have naphtha vapors evaporating out, and they will ignite, and you will have a flaming engine on your hands. Don't ask me how I know that. So now that I got my O-ring in there, I'm just going to tighten this up. And it should squeeze down. That's one thing I didn't show you. When you've got the right O-ring in there, before you tighten down the screw, it should have a little bit of sponginess. So there's a little gap to the, when you put the cover on, you can squeeze the O-ring and it'll bounce back some. That way it's pinching on the shaft of the rod of the piston. As far as special tools for this job, their only thing is the small nut drivers and screwdrivers and wrenches. There's a small fee to outfit yourself, but once you've got them, they're good for any number of your projects. The screwdriver you might already have, and then the tool of choice for me to cut out my gaskets is actually the little scissors that came in my manicure kit. You know, usually come in a kit with all of your nail clippers and whatnot. Just these little guys. Now that I've got that reattached, I will put my crosshead slide back on. You could thread this back in right now if you wanted to. This is the back side. This doesn't get much attention when you're wiping down your engine. Maybe this thing needs a dunk in the solvent tank. But once you put it in, this screw's hard to get to, so get it lined up, get it snug. You can make fine adjustments, but there's that. The only thing left, I could thread this in right now. Counting my turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Which is, I just went another half turn and I'm bottomed out. So it just spins all the way in on this one. Now what's left is the O-ring. A little bit of oil on my O-ring. I'll put a little bit of oil in here too. Just to make it easier to slide in. Now, I've got my marking for the witness mark for where the steam line was lined up there again. And to prevent my gasket from spinning around on me, I'm actually going to put a screw through it right away. I might put an opposite one in too, just to keep things lined up. I guess I could spin this a little bit, get that rod further back. And there she's in. I want to get my screws started so I don't lose my gasket. And now the rest is just putting it all back the way it was. And I've replaced both O-rings. And if needed, you can replace both gaskets on your, this is an Accucraft K-36. And I believe most of the others should be similar. If not, let me know. did not put any Loctite on these screws. As long as you go together clean and give them a good snug, these tools are good because it's kind of hard to get over tight on this size fastener with these little tools. But there is always the possibility of shearing your screw inside your cylinder wall, in which case that's a whole nother project. There, my cylinder's back on. Wonder if I got, that screw was a little bit bent. I wonder if I got a replacement screw. Where's that? There's that snap case of screws. Oh, perfect. I don't think I'll even need to cut it. Let me try the old screw. Maybe there's something to it. Why are you not going in? This would be where it's important to make sure that if you do change your gasket on the back side here, that you use the same size gasket. If you go on the side, I've got a leak, I'm going to fix that leak, I need a thicker gasket. Well, you could give yourself a headache here because now your crosshead slide is possibly too far back. Or like I might have just discovered, you need to wait to torque those bottom screws until you have this thing started. Hopefully that's the case. All right, let me see what's going on. And we're back. So I discovered my folly. If you remember, I said when assembling the crosshead slide to the bracket here to make sure it's good and tight because you can't get in here once it's assembled. We'll make sure that it's also aligned right, otherwise you won't be able to get the screw in. So I had to pull the cylinder back off, slide that as far forward as the hole allows, And then that allowed me to go in here with a little bit of forward pressure on the back of the cylinder. So I still need to tighten these up again. Now that this is all put together, make sure your cylinder cocks are open. You slide it all the way forward, all the way back. There's no binding of anything. Another thing I learned recently was if your crosshead slide is not shimmed right vertically, you will have binding on as you go in. The piston rod is trying to be out of alignment here. Actually, as you come out is when it's the worst. When you go in, it's not as bad, but as you come out, you'll get some binding if your crosshead slide is not lined up right. So now that I have that put together, I can swing my drive rod forward again, turn my wheel a little bit to get things lined up so it'll go together, and put my little spacer in place. Now I can put the nut on. Well, this is a shouldered bolt, so you just put it on there snug. I do believe there was a form of Loctite on this one when I took it apart, because I had to use tools the whole way off. There we go. There. In 35 minutes, I explained how to do the O-rings for the gland and the piston. And it would just take a few more minutes to cut out the gaskets if that's what you had to do. But that would take care of the piston of any possible steam leaks. So haven't gone into the valve chest yet. If I do, I will explain more later.